Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for watching, for listening, for following, for subscribing. I appreciate you all. We are about to get into, literally in a matter of minutes here, our fourth and second to last weekly Buffalo Bills mock draft. I got a very special guest returning to the show here in just a second. Real quick, though, at the very top, literally as we're getting ready to record this, I'm recording this actually on Tuesday morning, and just minutes ago, the Buffalo Sabres have announced that they have fired head coach Don Granato. I am going to have a ton to say about that. We'll cover that extensively on tomorrow's show, but today is all about the Buffalo Bills, and like I said, our mock draft. And with me today, man, it's been quite a while. Quite a while. My man, Aaron Quinn from Cover One. I had to go and look up the date of my guy.
When was it?
September 13th, man. 7 full months with no Aaron Quinn on Talk Buffalo. But that changes today, my man. What's going on? How you doing?
Do I still lead the guest appearances on the show?
I think so. You or Joe Yurden, which is funny because I haven't had Joe on the show in quite a while either. But I think so. If it's not you, it's Joe Yurden. It's real close. But how you doing, man?
Good,
I know your golfing has become, since we talked last. I mean, you've always been a golf guy, but you've really been on the course as much as you can. You have stepped up your passion for golf. I know that from talking to you and following you, of course, over the past 6 to 12 months, man.
Yeah. So it ramped up. My wife made a huge mistake by encouraging me to get back into golf actively, because it was kind of one of those things that was like simmering underneath.
Yeah.
I was super addicted to it, high school age, played for my high school team, all that stuff. I loved it. And then just kind of went away. Life got in the way, and she encouraged me to get back into it. And I think that she has found that that's a mistake. This winter, I replaced all my clubs. I dropped a couple grand on clubs. So that's got me even itching even more to get out and hit those new clubs and stuff. So, but we've got some cool stuff too. I don't know if you've seen Cover One. We are doing a Cover One golf thing with David Tilton, Nate Geary's involved, our producer of Cover One Buffalo, Chris Kepner. We've been that's been bubbling on the side for a while, and we've talked about all wanting to make content, do some of that stuff, and turn our golf into content. And so we're going to give it a shot, and that's a fun way to make a hobby some more content.
That's what I would call a legitimate, for you, especially like a passion project, right?
It is. It's like Greg has the Greg Thompson sports show. That was sort of his pet project that he went off on a couple years ago. And he encouraged me actually a ton to take this one. We kind of talked about it with David Tilton, who is on the Air Raid Hour, those guys, which they do a great job with Bill's content. And they said, even if it doesn't do anything, just go off and have a pet project, like just have some fun, man. And that's, when I got into the content game, I think a lot of people come at me like, oh, you're trying to drive engagement. You're trying to get clicks. Like, really, even the Cover One Buffalo stuff and my main handle, it's all fun. It's all still a hobby for me. Like, I don't care if anyone likes it or not. I'm just doing it for me, not for other people.
Yeah. I mean, you know, to some extent, you got to do stuff that's going to fuel an audience, but you also got to do things that you enjoy. I think it keeps you engaged in what you do. I do some stuff on this show, wing reviews. Yeah. I know some people out there don't give a shit about wings. I get comments all the time, stick to football, or, right now, if we're going to bullshit them, because I'm about to get into a couple of minutes of some cruise talk with you in a second, and people are going to bitch about that. They're like, well, I'm here for the mock draft. Well, you know what? Tough shit. Fast forward a handful of minutes. You mentioned Greg Thompson real quick, too. I want to plug two things. Thursday night, live from Imperial Pizza, I'm going to have Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic, who covers the Buffalo Sabres. So I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about Don Granato. And then next Tuesday night, live from Sunny Reds in Lackawanna, just minutes from the stadium. Great place for wings. I'm going to have your guy. I'm going to have your partner with me, man. Greg Thompson is going to be in town, and Greg is going to join me live from Sunny Reds, and that'll be just 2 days before the NFL draft. So
I won't lie. That's a little bit why you still have yet to invite me to go get wings and talk with you. It's always here on early in the mornings we record. So I'm a little offended that Greg's going to go get some wings with you, but maybe I'll crash it. Maybe I'll come crash it.
Dude, if you can make the time, seriously, come up next Tuesday night, Sunny Reds. It's going to be a really good time. And I'm telling you, I promise you this. I don't want to get into some wings talk right now. Those wings are
I've had them. I've had Sunny Reds.
Oh, have you? All right.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
they're to me, they're top 5 wings, man. I absolutely love that place. Before we get into our mock draft, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of a history of the first 3 weeks in just a minute. I just hinted at this. You went on a cruise recently with your family. Odyssey of the Seas.
It was, yeah.
Whole entire family. Give me a quick rundown of that was your first cruise, correct?
It is, yeah.
All right, so now that's something we have in common because I also went on and that's a Royal Caribbean ship. I went on a smaller ship than you, Radiance of the Sea, and I did that in February. That was the first time I've ever been on a cruise in my life. Just quickly for people out there who have been on cruises or are thinking about going on them, what were your impressions? What were your thoughts? Was it worth it? Was it good value? Was it worth the money? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, so going into it, so I'm a big fan of all-inclusive resorts. My wife and I have done that a few times, and I love traveling to the Caribbean and being on a resort and eating all the food that I want, doing whatever I want. And so I was a little nervous and skeptical. We booked a cruise with my brother and his family a year in advance. It was something we were just kind of shooting off the cuff and we're like, hey, why don't we do this? And we booked it. And going into it, I definitely was skeptical. I've heard some negative things about cruises in terms of you're stuck on a boat with all these people and some of the things you want to do, you might not be able to get to do. And you got to go get chairs quickly and all this stuff. And that's just not how I like to travel. I like to do it at my own pace.
Right.
And honestly, there was maybe some inconvenience to being on the boat with that many people, but overall, I thought it was a fantastic experience. From the moment when we got on the boat, that was quick. I thought that was going to take a long time to get on the boat and do all that, but we were on the boat pretty quick.
Where'd you port from? Where did you port from? What
Fort
city?
Lauderdale.
Okay.
And so we went Fort Lauderdale. We went to their own island in the Bahamas, the Coco Cay, which was a great day. They call it perfect day at Coco Cay. And it really was. You can buy extra stuff like the water park and an extra beach, and they have a beach for adults, but you don't need to. We went to the pool, we went to the beach, all that was free. They had chairs everywhere. There was no rush to get chairs. Like there was plenty of seats, whatever you wanted to do. The complimentary buffet lunch at their island was fantastic, on point. Really all the food throughout the entire cruise was super good, and you eat all you want. My kids love that. And it's nice to leave your wallet in the safe and not have to worry about any of that stuff once you get on the ship. And if you want to spend more money, they definitely have the opportunities to do that as well. And so the cruise itinerary was great. We also did Grand Cayman. We did a day in port there. We went on a beach excursion. That was fantastic. And then we did Jamaica, and we didn't even do anything in Jamaica. We just got off at the port in Falmouth, Jamaica, and kind of shopped around the port, and then spent the rest of the day on the boat while everybody else was off the boat, which was a nice break for us.
Sure.
But in terms of the boat, man, like I was a little nervous that we wouldn't be able to get seats by the pool, or that everything was going to just be too busy. And the pool definitely got congested on sea days, and there was some, but honestly, we had so much sun that we had to get out of the sun a little bit and go into the boat and do some of the other stuff anyway. But we never really felt, outside of waiting on some ping pong tables for the kids and stuff like that, you pretty much got to do whatever you wanted on the boat. They had enough different activities and different things going on where it didn't feel like I was in a rush or anxiety to get certain things or anything like that. We had great seats in the main dining room. We had great service. The dinners every night were fantastic. So overall, I was super happy. My wife actually did about 5 minutes prior to us going on the show, just sent me a quote for an itinerary for a 9-night cruise with Royal Caribbean. And I got to say, shout out to Royal Caribbean, man. Their staff, every single person that we interacted with was super awesome. We had a couple of issues where we had to get to guest services. They fixed it super quick. Everybody had a smile. Everybody was wondering how we were doing, what they could do to make our experience better. And everybody in my whole family was very happy with the entire experience.
I'm really glad that you said that too, because shout out to Royal Caribbean. Their cruise, I mean, their staff was top notch. That's probably my biggest takeaway from going on a cruise with them this past year. Everything you needed. instantly. Bartenders were great, servers were great, guest services were great. My wife had an issue with her internet with her phone, and they taught her how to reset it instantly. Yeah, the service was great. Only downside for us, and we went on a smaller boat. Especially my wife, she got some seasickness.
My
Which,
son got one night of it. Yeah.
yeah, we got and my wife. We were there. We only had a 4-night cruise. She had too. We're going to Cocoa Bay because, by the way, we've already booked now.
Booked
We're
your next
going
one.
on.
Did you book it on board?
No. So the difference between us is like you went on a legitimate family cruise, you and your family.
Yeah.
I went, my wife and I went with a group in Florida, and I mean 200 people from a sports organization that were friends, most of them we were friends with. So it was kind of like a party atmosphere for us. So they're doing it again. They're calling it an MVP Cruise 2. This time we're going to go on Liberty of the Seas, which is a bigger boat than the first one that we went on. But yeah, man, all in all, I thought it was worth the money. I was a little skeptical as well. I'm like, this is a lot of money and just for 4 days, but I would do it. I am doing it again. Would you do it again? I mean, money's always an issue, but
yeah, but not to sound whatever or just like, I don't want it to sound like we don't care, but the one thing we invest in is vacations. For ourselves, we enjoy traveling. So, yeah, I mean, I think you knew a couple of years ago we've done Hawaii a few times. That's a big money.
I remember that
vacation. We've done, like I said, we do all inclusive resorts. Those aren't cheap either. And so it's investment to us. We like to travel with our kids, with our family, and so honestly, the deal that you get, the bang for your buck, isn't crazy. And if you're not doing a ton of excursions, it doesn't make it worse.
Right.
I will say one thing that was annoying to me is the daily gratuities that they offer or that they have that they charge you daily. So it ended up being like $400 or $500 for my entire family, $20 a day in gratuities. Just put that in the cost up front. Like, why do we have to do this other thing and do the gratuities? You can, but we were hit with it later. We booked so early and then we saw it later. And so it was annoying to us that, and then I was trying to think, did you guys do any of the shows on the?
So the boat that we went on, no, we didn't. And I can't even remember what it was, which just shows you that it wasn't really memorable. The shows, if there was one thing about this specific cruise on this boat that we went on, the entertainment was a little bit whack. Okay. I think they invest more in the better shows and the bigger ships and the better cruises. Yeah, I can't remember what it was. I know that we did not go to a show though. Yeah,
because I'm not like a big musical guy. I don't like Broadway stuff. But we did a show every night and they were all really good and they invested quite a bit into it. And that was an additionally a fun aspect of going on the cruise.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not really necessarily a booze cruise. You can go on with a family and have a really good time. Saturday Night Fever, I know that's one of the main shows that's going to be on the next cruise that we're going on. Anyway, I better get off this cruise talk because I can keep you here all day just talking about this. Maybe.
Well, I will say the one thing I would really appreciate is going into it. I had heard mixed reviews of whether or not you get live sports on cruises, and there was a couple big events. Obviously, the national championship. I'm a huge UConn fan, so the college national championship. My brother lives in Connecticut, and he's a huge fan. So we were unsure if we were going to be able to maintain and watch that. And they had a great sports bar with massive TVs. He and I stayed up late and watched the college basketball championship, and the bar was full of UConn fans. That was a cool experience. And then ESPN was on in our room. So I had the Masters most of the weekend until we got back. And so that was also a cool benefit because I'd heard you don't get a lot of live TV offerings on cruises, but this one had it all.
You were on a bigger boat. See, like you said, you had more bars and stuff like that. Now it's funny. You were there for a national championship game. I was on the boat for a Super Bowl. They had it there. Right. They showed it in the main pool area.
That's cool.
They also was in the bedroom. And actually, the one time we did go into the theater wasn't to watch a show. It was they were showing the Super Bowl there, and we went there only for the halftime show, and we left right after Usher. All right, so let's kind of turn our attention here now to this draft, and before we lock into the actual draft, let me ask you this: does wide receiver feel like such a big need right now that we kind of put? I maybe we're almost putting a lot of thought into other spots too much right now because it just feels like wide receiver is so obvious. I mean, on the surface, it feels like getting at least one wide receiver early in this draft kind of feels like the biggest need this team's had probably since quarterback going back to 2018. You agree with that?
So prior to Stefon Diggs trade, which we haven't even had a chance to talk about, even offline, prior to that, I was pumping the brakes a little bit on
Me
the
too.
idea of like, you need to go get this guy in round one and you need a wide receiver one type guy to come in. I'm still pumping the brakes a little bit on the type of wide receiver that people assume that the Bills need. I
Yeah.
don't know that, everyone makes a big issue about boundary and X wide receivers. And I think the NFL is changing a little bit in terms of positionless. Like, think about how the Bills linebacking core, like Matt Milano's not your prototypical linebacker. Terrell Bernard's not a prototypical linebacker.
Right.
And sometimes that lack of size definitely hurts the Bills, but they've been able to maintain a very good defense with that. I think wide receivers sort of trending in that way where you can have these guys that can move around a little bit. And so everyone locks into a Curtis Samuel as, hey, he's just a slot guy. And yeah, he performs better out of the slot and his best season has been out of the slot, but I think he can do multiple things. And same with Khalil Shakir. And there's some guys in this draft, Lad McConkey type guys, even a Roman Wilson type guy, where I think a lot of people in Bills Mafia are out on those guys because you already have Khalil Shakir and you already have Curtis Samuel, but I'm not out on them just because I think you can have positionless wide receivers. So, and to answer your question, yeah, I think wide receivers at the top priority. Defensive tackles probably right behind it in terms of just you don't have the bodies and you need to get some youth in there as well. And the only thing is this draft is a perfect mix of you have that need, but also best player available continues to seem, at least from the mocks, like we don't know teams boards and how all this is going to fall out. All we have is consensus mocks and consensus big boards that we're given by the media. And in those worlds, in that world, it seems like at least in this first two rounds of these mocks, it almost falls into your lap where there's going to be a guy available that it can come in and make an impact in 2024 and maybe, be that next level player for you. And so it's a perfect match of need and best player available, which is, I think, what Brandon Beane was hoping for.
So we've done 3 mock drafts, and I'll say this to your point about before the Diggs trade, wide receiver not necessarily being a lock for a first round pick. Week 1, I had Bruce Nolan, and he took Jackson Powers Johnson with this with the
Yep.
Bills' first pick. I did one solo the second week, and I took Chop Robinson as my
I
first
like
pick.
that. Yeah.
2 hours later, Stefon Diggs, literally 2 hours later after my mock draft dropped, Stefon got traded. Last week, I had Anthony Prohaska from Cover One on with me, and he ultimately went with Xavier Worthy. Man, I agree with you 100% about almost like a positionless type wide receiver on this football team right now. And it's pretty wild because typically, dude, I would say, all right, so your big 3 are gone, which, by the way, let me interrupt myself here to ask you this. Rome Odunze, is he the guy? Is he a guy to you that is worthy of, let's say you get up to pick 9 with the Bears, who might be looking to move down? Is
Sure.
it worth giving up multiple firsts, probably a maybe even a second with that, or a third and something else as well? Is there any one of those wide receivers that if they can get to 8 or 9 that you might say, despite all these good receivers, some of them like kind of positionless type fields for the Bills, that somebody like Neighbors or Roman or Odunze, maybe you would move up for? You like, is that just going to be too rich for your blood almost no matter what?
I mean, the Bills are flush with capital, right? And we
Mhm.
know that Brandon Beane's done a good job in some of those mid rounds of being able to fill in depth and starters at other positions in need. So I think that gives you a little bit of leeway and insurance because there are other needs. I think we are so hyper focused on wide receiver, but the Bills really have to get a youth movement of both starter quality and depth players in here with some of those later picks. But you have a lot of them. And so I think
Mhm.
that gives him a little bit more leeway in the being aggressive. That's a rich one for my blood. I love Romaduzzi. So he checks every possible box for what you would want for a guy to potentially come in and be number one for the future
Mhm.
for Josh Allen. So I'm not going to say no to a move like that. If they do it, I'm gonna be super excited. I think it's a very. I know Bean likes to be aggressive, and he's gonna want to get in and move up if that type of situation falls into place. But a trade up like that takes quite a bit to make happen, and that's a big jump. And I don't know if the Bears want to move back that far. I know they want to get more picks and stuff, but I could see them maybe moving back a few spots with
Mhm.
another team that would want to come up and make that move. The Bills are also not the only team that if Aduze starts to creep towards the back half of that top 10, that
Right.
there's going to be some other teams that also want to get in play
Mhm.
there, which is going to make that cost probably even
Gonna
greater.
drive it. You sure?
And so it seems like an unlikely scenario, even though I do think Bean would want to be in on that. I'd still also be in that scenario where if Brian Thomas starts to sort of trickle down a little bit and falls within trade range, I think there's a little more. He's got a high ceiling, but we don't know where his floor is, so that's a little more of a risky move. He doesn't check every single box. He definitely would provide some value immediately in 2024 for what the Bills need. He's another guy I would definitely consider making a move for. But again, this class is so deep. And if Bean is going to get aggressive and make some moves, I don't think he's leaving with 11 picks. I'm not doing a lot of mocks that include trades just because I hate sort of projecting some of those things. And it's to your point, it could take 2 hours to do some of these mocks because you have so many picks to go through. I don't think he's leaving with 11. My perfect scenario, I've said this for years. You've done a lot of mocks with me. Every year I'm saying, how do we get the most amount of picks in the top 100 and leave with the most top 100 prospects on your board as possible? So I'd almost rather get up into the third round, get up earlier into the second, and move some of those later round picks to condense them and get a couple more guys in that top 100 to fill spots. Even some of the ones that people aren't really thinking of as needs necessarily for 2024, but going forward, as Josh Allen's cap continues to rise, as some of these other guys are going to get more and more money and the Bills are going to get tighter up against the cap going forward, I want to see them fill in those spots with more top 100 players every year. And this seems like the perfect year to do it because you have so many picks on the back end. So if he's going to get aggressive, I'd rather see it outside of the first round. I think you're going to get a high value player that falls to you somewhere at 28 here, maybe a small move up in the first, but I'd much rather jump up in the second to get one of those high value guys or get yourself a third round pick with some of those later picks and leave with more top 100 players.
Yeah, for sure. And when you have a position in need like wide receiver, typically I'd be like, all right, the first year are going to be gone. And let's just say the Bills aren't going to do anything nuts. So those top three are gone quick. Ryan Thomas Jr. And now we've been hearing, I know you've seen it too over the last couple of days, of Donnie Mitchell all of a sudden is going from a late first, maybe early second round guy to a guy who probably is going to go somewhere in the top 20. So you might be like, if you can't get up high enough or you don't want to go up high enough for that and Thomas Jr. and Mitchell are gone, you're talking about the 5 top receivers gone. You're talking about taking wide receiver 6 in the first round. Normally, I'd be like, nope. But I'll tell you, man, guys like Ladd McConkey.
I love Ladd.
I know you do. And I'll tell you, I just got the feeling. Sometimes, you just get that feeling in your bones about a player.
Sure.
I kind of feel like that about him right now. Like, I would love Ladd McConkey. Xavier Leggette's the other guy, too. I love one of those guys to be the Bills' pick. I'd be doing almost cartwheels if the Bills got them, especially if they didn't have to give up draft capital to get one of those guys. Real quick, because I want to get going here. I do have a goal. You're going to be the GM. You're going to make the picks at the end of the day. But I want to let you know, so you got 2 seconds next year. I want to use one of them in this draft. I want to, for one of 2 things, either A, to potentially move up, or actually 3 things. Maybe to use it with 28 to move up in the first round, or combine it with pick 60. And if you add those together, you can go from the bottom of the second round to near the top of the second round to go get a guy using 2 2s. Or I might want to use it to get a third round pick this year as well, given a second next year for maybe an earlier third, mid third this year. So we'll see how that works. On that note, all right, let me do this right here. Let me pull this up. People can see it on the video side. You'll be able to watch us on the audio side. We'll do our best to describe things that are going on. Get ready to get this going. All right, so we're going to get the draft started. I'm going to stop at a couple of points in the first, at least in the first round, maybe once or twice in the second round, just to see where we might be in terms of who's there or draft possibilities. Kind of like,
I still wish
your charts. Good.
If PFF is listening, man, I still wish they would make it a little bit easier to see the board when you pause and see the full board.
Sure.
Come on, guys.
Biggest glitch by far. Yeah, it sucks. So Aaron is saying if when we stop this and we want to say, well, who's there? I might want to trade what safety there. Yeah. You got to remember in your head because they won't pull it up. All right, so let's start. We're going to go all the way. We're going to go to first. We'll stop at pick 8.
Yeah.
This is going a little slower than I meant it to, but that's
all right. So Nduze's already off the board.
All right, so Nduze is already off the board. Neighbors is off the board. Harrison's off the board. So the thought of making a big-ass trade is gone. In fact, all 3 were gone in the first 6 picks, by the way, which is Leate Latu goes pick 7 to the Titans. Kind of surprising. All right, so if you're looking wide receiver here, I would say 16 to 17, or actually about 18 is where you would want to stop next, where you're talking like a first and a second to
Right.
possibly get up to. So let's go to a pick, say 19 when the Rams
Hey,
are on the
Cooper
clock.
DeJean went real quick too.
All right, so the Rams would be on the clock. All right, so in terms of the receivers that we like that next here, we're at pick 19 with the Rams. Thomas Jr. is still there. Mitchell's still there. Wow, Jaden Daniels fell all the way to 11th in this mock too. The Vikings. Jets take Byron Murphy. That's pretty much it for like things that I think are real interesting. All right, so pick 19. Again, you're talking first and a second to go up and get a guy. Just for shits and giggles, if I were to try to do a trade on the mock and give up a first and a second, it says it would be accepted. So I'll ask you, as the GM, would you be willing to go up to 19? You would be giving up pick 28 this year, your first rounder, and you'd be giving up a second rounder next year. Are one of these guys worth it to you, or do you want to see how things play out?
I'm not out on Mitchell, but everything that I've seen and read about him tells me that he doesn't seem like the fit for the Bills in terms of that work ethic. We've seen on tape, you've seen him not finishing routes and things like that. And I know that a guy can change and he can come into the building and adapt to the culture, but those are a little bit red flags for me in terms of moving assets to go get that guy. That feels too risky to me. I know he's got the athleticism. He tracks the ball well. He can do some of the things that Bills Mafia really wants a wide receiver to be able to do, but he doesn't feel like the guy that's valuable to trade up for. For me, it's Brian Thomas Jr. And I'm torn here, to be honest, Pat. Like, I do think this is the spot you got to go. I think Pittsburgh's in the running to grab another wide receiver to pair with Pickens. I think Miami might also be, in terms of, I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain keeping Tyreek and Waddle together long term. So they want to probably get something else in there. Dallas is probably a team also you want to get ahead of. We've heard them being in on wide receivers here for years. And so I think you probably would have to make this jump at 19. But again, I feel so confident in two things. One, outside of running back, I think wide receiver has become maybe the easiest room to turn around for the NFL year after year, whether it's this draft or any other draft of the last 5 years. Wide receiver is deep. I know we're talking about this class being generational, but it's really that top heavy three that is making the conversation so much. And then there's a lot of depth. But we often forget, we get all absorbed in these first round guys, but Stefon Diggs was a 5th round pick, right? Like a lot of the top guys, and that takes time and you can't bank on that happening, but good wide receivers are coming into the NFL every single year. 7-on-7 football in the youth football is making wide receiver position so much greater. And then that also has a trickle down effect later, in that a lot of good wide receivers are going to get removed from their teams because of these guys getting drafted early. And so there's always seems to be a flush ability to get wide receivers, even if the Bills don't land that true number one or future number one in 2024. I think they can get enough guys, whether it's through a double dip here, if we wait till 28 and then take one in the, with 60 or 128, or we move back up. I think there's an opportunity to get 2 guys that one of them could make a huge impact in 2024. And then you have another more in the filler system. And so I think for me, if I'm the GM, the risk reward ability here, I think it's a wait it out and see how this board falls.
I was going to, obviously you're the GM, you're going to make the final call. I'm glad you made that call, because if it was me being the GM, as much as I like the upside of Brian Thomas Jr., there's enough red flags that I don't feel great about giving up a second round next year. That's a premium asset to go get him. So we're going to let this go. And then the next stop's going to be pick 23, because now you're talking 23, 24 is where you're getting into 3rd round territory instead of a second. So let it play for a couple picks here. All right, so now Minnesota would be on the clock. The last couple picks, the board kind of fell our way if you're looking receivers. So Johnny Noonan goes to the Steelers. They passed on a receiver. Miami goes tackle, and Philly goes Graham Barton, a guy who I think, by the way, if he falls, could potentially be in play for the Buffalo Bills, especially if they see him as being a guard early in his career. But anyway, now you got Minnesota on the clock. Now you're probably talking, and let's just do the machine here. You'd be moving up 5 spots. You don't have a 3rd this year, so you give up a 3rd next year. So now you're talking a 1st and a 3rd next year can probably get you up to 23. What are your thoughts now? Kind of the same deal? Is a third rounder as opposed to a second rounder? Is that still too rich for a Brian Thomas Jr. or an Adonai Mitchell? Or at this point, do you just say, you're willing to let the board fall the way it falls? This will be the last stop before 28, too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Mitchell's
maybe
not
not.
going to be there at 28. He's going to go in this next run. So same with Thomas Jr. I think they'll both here be off the board in the next run. But again, like to your point, like I'm happy with Lad McConkey, right? Like if
Yeah.
he falls here, I'm happy there. Leggett, I'd be happy to grab here. I think there's some tackles that might be available, defensive tackles that still might be available that I'd be happy with. So you know me, dude, Pat. Like I'm so conservative when it comes to this stuff that I will let the board fall for me. And then the assets we can move here, we have plenty of assets again to come back up here. I think the move might be, if it doesn't fall the way we want here at 28, is to jump into that first half of the second.
Okay, sounds good. I agree with you too as well. Letting it roll here. Adonai Mitchell goes to Dallas. Brian Thomas Jr. goes to Tampa.
And
Troy Franklin goes 27. By the way, I put out a tweet. Can I? This is not breaking news. You know me, dude. I'm no insider. I don't try to be an insider, but I know a couple people and I hear a couple things. I'm telling you this. This is not me speculating. It's not my opinion. Troy Franklin is pretty high on the Bills board. I'm not saying he's 28 in the draft, first pick, if they weren't to move down. But I promise you this, man, they are pretty high. This organization is on Troy Franklin. Anyway, for people who are listening, if you were hoping a receiver, one of those two guys would just simply fall to the Bills at 28, it didn't happen. Adonai Mitchell went 24 to Dallas. Brian Thomas Jr. went 26 to Tampa. And then Troy Franklin, a little bit of a surprise there, goes 27 to the Arizona Cardinals. All right, well, the Buffalo Bills now are on the board. Lad McConkey is there. Xavier Worthy is there. We'll take a quick look at the other receivers. Keon Coleman, I'm just not interested. I won't. I'll draw the line there, dude. I'm not letting you take him at 28. Xavier Leggett is there at 28. So there's plenty of receivers that we love that are still there. Non-receivers that you may like a lot. Jackson Powers Johnson, the interior offensive lineman, is there. Kool-Aid McKinstry. God, I love that name. From Alabama, the corner. He's there.
I love Sandstro. Even though I don't want to take him at 28. I think he's a Bills prototypical player. I think he fits exactly what they're doing. I like Zach Frazier too. I do think interior offensive line is more of a sneaky need than I don't feel confident in what they've got right now. There is a scenario, Chop Robinson. I'd be happy to walk away with in this scenario.
I think you'd have to consider him here. I really do. I think you'd have to consider him just for the upside. There's also,
there's a scenario here. Go take a look at the trades that people are offering right now, because there is a lot of names on this board where you might have the ability to move back a few spots into the later part here of the first round and let somebody come up and grab Kool-Aid or somebody like that you're not necessarily, you don't need the cornerback position early, and maybe the Ravens want to come up and grab him and jump the Lions. Maybe San Francisco wants to make a move. You probably don't want to do it with Kansas City and allow them to come up and get the wide receiver of their choice. But
I think Baltimore at 30 is interested, but I think Baltimore is a great chance that they go get a receiver if you trade with them.
It might be. But this would be one of those scenarios of like moving chess pieces around. I'm not saying we do it necessarily, but where, maybe the board falls this way and Beane moves back a little bit here, maybe to recoup. I don't know if you could get that third round pick back in this scenario or something like that, or give himself enough ammunition to, you move back here, you move up in the second to get in that top half of the second. So you still get your first rounder and an early second round guy. And then maybe again, you come back up into that third round to make that third round pick. And again, consolidating as many of these top 100 players as you can get your hands on.
Well, we got to trade with Baltimore, where if we were to move down 2 spots from 28 to 30, we can get their third, which is 93, and give up a fourth, which is 128. So we'd be gaining 28 plus 7. So we'd be gaining 35 draft spots with their third pick by just moving down 2 spots. That actually sounds pretty damn appealing.
I would do that.
Me too.
I would take that trade.
I think you have to. The trade was accepted. All right, so resume draft.
And I think they're going to take Kool-Aid. He just seems like a Ravens fit to me. But
yeah, sure he does. So does Jackson Powers Johnson, by the way. 28, 29, and then we're on the board.
Oh, yep. They took Kool-Aid.
Oh, there goes Chop Robinson, 29 to Detroit. All right, so we did move back to, we now have a third rounder instead of our fourth. So we got that. I told you before the draft, I wanted a third rounder. You said that too. We got another top 100 pick.
Yep.
And in terms of receiver, I think this fell as good as it could because you still got Lamb McConkey, you still got Xavier Legette. I feel like one of those guys are going to be your pick.
Yeah, and also, I will say, if you are dead set on getting an edge out of this draft, I know people don't want to see edge with the first round pick. I think you got to do it early because after Robinson's gone, like look at this edge group. Beyond that, it's not great. Really,
No.
you've maybe got some developmental guys, but the Bills have a lot of that already. Like they have rotational developmental guys. What you're looking for, if you're trying to add an edge through the draft, is you're looking for somebody to. My hope is still, I saw enough of Von Miller starting to trend in the right direction. I know people were frustrated with Von Miller not putting up stats,
Right.
not even hurting the team at times last year in his recovery. I think they rushed it back too soon. I've always been a big believer that ACL injuries, especially in older players, is going to take a full year and a half for them to even get back close to where they were. And Von's probably never getting back to 100%, but even if he gets back to 80% of what he was, I think that he can still be a productive, bendy, sack getting edge. But that's the kind of thing you're looking to replace, right? You've already got Groot, who's a really solid edge player and who can generate pressure, great against the run. AJ Epinesa is a good rotational guy, and I think he can get some of those sacks, but he's not the guy that's going to strike fear in offenses. You want a guy like a Chop Robinson who's going to be a matchup nightmare for people. And there's nothing else beyond him that I see. Maybe some of these guys will work out, but my point is, if you want edge, you're going to have to bite the bullet and do that early in this draft. And so that didn't work out for us here. If this is me, dude.
Well, let me ask you a question here. Let me ask you this. You got Chris Barrett, you got like 4 or 5 edge guys right now on the board.
Sure.
I don't think 20, or now we're at 30. I'm sorry. I still think that none of these picks, to me anyway, matches. However, I also think that these guys are going to go off the board before you pick again at 60. So do you think potentially a mindset of get your receiver now and then let's, mid 30s or late 30s, let's potentially look to see what's on the board and maybe package, like I said, that 2 next year with a 2 to get up from 60 to 37, 38. If one of these guys you might like as an early second rounder. But again, now you're talking 2 2s to go get one of them. That might be too rich. You might think that there's not a guy there that's worth that.
Yeah. Honestly, my move, if I'm moving back up,
you are the GM.
Yeah. If it's my move, one, I'm going to go ahead and take McConkey here, and then I'm going to pause it maybe get up to Washington's pick at 36 and see where things are at. Where are we at in the second? What did we pick up?
In the second round, well, we picked up at third round, and we picked up 90. We picked up pick 93. So let's do this.
Oh, okay. So we're at 30, and then we get 60, 93. All right, let's take McConkey. My move would be to come back up here early in the second and double dip at wide receiver.
All right, I like that. All right, so let's make the pick here. We're gonna pick McConkey, and then we're gonna pause at 36 and see what's up with Washington. Who, by the way, with Anthony Rahaska, we had 2 trades. They were both with Washington last time. So let's make that pick, and then we'll pause again at 36.
Yep. And I honestly, anyone in the comment section that's gonna get on me about McConkey only being a slot receiver, I'm gonna come back at you. I don't care. I really don't care. He's not just a slot receiver. So yeah, Sandstrill's gone. I love him. That would be a fit. But other than that.
All right. So if you're looking double dip, well, first of all, we got to be able to make a trade with Washington. So let's just see what it's going to take. 36 to 60. If you were to give up, say, a third next year, it's only 7%. See, so that's not going to happen. I'm telling you, I've done from experience. If you want to get all the way up from 36 to 60, it's going to cost you a second rounder.
I'm not itching to. I would see maybe if there's another run on some of these guys, because I would take Polk. I would take Leggett. Purcell is another dude I would take. Worthy's not off the board yet, right? Worthy's still on the board. So
Xavier Worthy's still there, correct?
You've got 4 dudes at least. So maybe if there's a run on receiver, so maybe let's get to that next Washington pick and see.
At pick 40.
I think the Titans are probably in play. I think the Panthers are probably in play for a receiver. So let's see how that shakes out here as they go.
All right. I'll tell you what. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a really, really quick break.
Yeah.
Come back on the other side. We're going to pause it, or we're going to keep the draft going and see if we can deal with Washington right on the other side. All right, I'm back with Aaron Quinn from Cover One. We are doing a Buffalo Bills mock draft. We have landed Land McConkey in the first round. We're at pick 36. We're going to let this go for a little bit and see what's up with Washington again at 40. All right, so
All these
Jackson Powers
receivers.
Jr. goes to Carolina. Zach Frazier. All right, so if you're looking interior line in the second round, trying to move up, too late for that. Zach Frazier gone to the Chargers. And Jackson Powers Jr. or Johnson, I'm sorry, goes to Carolina. All right, so Washington at 40. Xavier Legette is still there. Xavier Worthy is still there. Although I will say, if you draft McConkey, I don't know that Xavier Worthy could possibly be a fit. I know even with the positional stuff, man, you're talking some small ass dudes on your team, man. Xavier Legette just feels so good to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
No.
Let's see. So 40, 60, again, now 133, no. 93, only 39. You're still, looks like you're still in that second rounder. If you were trying to give up a third next year, because you could say, all right, I got a first and
Right.
2 twos. And let's say, because we've said we're not looking to make 11 picks this year, right?
Yep.
So let's just see this. A 74% chance. Here's the trade. All right. I kind of like this for people listening. 60 to 40, you move up. It would cost you 60, pick 144 this year, and a third rounder next year. You still got 1 and 2 twos next year. What do you think about this?
My only thinking is, well, one, what I hate to do with these mocks is I hate to game the mock, because we know how the boards work, and we know you do enough of these mocks, you know where guys are going to be, and that's just not the way the NFL operates, right? If you have
Agreed.
a guy, you want to go get him. And Greg and I talk about this all the time. Like, yeah, we can game this to get it to do the things we want.
Right.
So I do think we could wait a little longer to get Legette. Just because I don't think they have him rated as highly as I do in the PFF boards. But then I look at these teams, and I don't know if Washington is in on receiver with Terry McLaurin and Dotson. So I don't know if they've got receiver as high as they would. Green Bay is also, they've made multiple investments in past drafts with receiver. They've got a young receiving core, so they're probably also not in. Maybe the Texans with Diggs just on the 1-year deal. They clearly were attacking the wide receiver position, but that's a bit of a full room right now to do it a second round pick. The Falcons could be, but they've got a lot of skill players. I think the Raiders are a spot. Saints are a spot. Colt, that's sort of the range you get into to maybe have to make up a move to get one of these receivers. But I don't know that you have to jump it right now to the Commanders. But if at the same time, if Legette's your guy and you want to get that big body dude that can do some of the things that people think an X needs to do, I'm also not opposed to just making that jump right now and getting it, because the value is not going to be a ton different between 40 and 45.
Agreed. And my mindset is, I don't think the compensation, even if you wait 5 more picks or 4 more picks, I don't think the compensation is going to be much. And to your point about playing the board, you probably could play the board right now and probably go another 8 picks without Xavier Legette going off. But I feel like he's a top 40 guy, top 40 to early 40s. So in my mind, it's like we either trade for him now or we just let the board play out and see how things would be. Because
let's make the trade. Let's do it. We're not leaving with 11 picks.
Which would be ironic, because again, it's just something about the Washington Commanders in this mock draft on my podcast. Let's see. Ooh, trade not accepted.
All right, so we got to roll it a little bit anyway. Let's roll over to the Raiders and see what happens.
All right, so we'll go to the Raiders. All right, let's go to the Raiders. I like that. We'll see what happens. All right, so now the Raiders.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to go one more here.
So there was a run on receivers here, though. Keon Cole,
holy shit, 4 for people listening to this show. Holy shit, man! 4 receivers just went 40 to 43. Ricky Purcell goes to Washington, who we rejected our trade. Those pricks. Keon Coleman goes to Green Bay. Jalen Polk, I'm sorry, goes to Houston. And Roman Wilson, a guy I guarantee you like him.
I do love him.
He went to Atlanta. All right, so the Raiders are on the clock. I feel like let's see what happens if we...
Let's see if we can get that same...
Yeah, so we said it would be pick, what was it, 1
44.
144, and then a third. It says it's likely to be accepted. I mean, this is a big move up. So you're
Could you
talking
do it for
15 spots.
160
Let's
instead
see.
of the 144?
Still, yep. All right.
What
let's
about for
do that.
163? I'm a haggler.
Anthony kept doing this last week too. Still likely. All right, let's 163 is good. I think 200
Yeah,
starts to get a little unrealistic. All right, so the offer is we're trying to get up from 60 to 44. We're offering 60, 163, and a third next year. And the Raiders accept our trade.
Cool.
I mean, this doesn't really take a lot of thought here. We're double dipping. Aaron.
Yeah, I would like also Fisk being on the board would be in play, but yeah, with the run on receivers, I'm just going to take my two guys and flush that room and not have to worry about it next year. I've got Khalil Shakir, I've got Leggett, I've got McConkey. I'm feeling pretty good about it. And then I throw in Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. Like I've got a good skill unit for Josh Allen here going forward.
I'm going to pause it right here at the end of the second round just to see. Now, because we talked about edge, and I'm looking here at the end. Brandon Fisk went 49 to the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Jenkins, a defensive tackle, I think would be a good fit for the Bills. He went to the Rams at 52. Darius Robinson, and I think that was Joe B's original first mock. Kind of said like an Eric Armstead type. Anyway, he goes 55 to Miami. Chris Baswell went to Green Bay. All right, so my point was this. If we were looking to make a defensive end pick with the second round pick instead of saying double dip at receiver, I feel like you would definitely have to trade up. If you want Robinson, Braswell, one of those guys, you feel like they're second round talents, you're probably going to have to move up from 60. Marcus Nealon went near the end of the second round as well to Frisco. All right, so I'm letting the clock move here. We'll start to pick up the pace here. Our next pick is 93. So we did it.
We got a little bit of a wait.
Yeah, a little bit of a wait. We'll just let it play out here.
But not as much as we had going into the draft, right? Picking up that third, I think, getting another player in the top 100. That's a good thing here for the Bills. Although it's going to throw me off a little bit since I've not been doing any trades. Again, to your point of playing the mock, I know what guys are roughly available at certain picks. So it'll be interesting to see who's here.
Sure. All right, so we're at pick 93. This is a run we picked up here.
I love Cooper Beebe right here, to be honest. It addresses interior line that you need.
He could start. He could start really soon.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm tempted to. I mean, if you want to take a look at other stuff,
let's just look just to see what else is there. I mean, that's really the name that stands out for me right here. Cam Kitchens, has fallen down a little bit, but there's a couple other safeties I like in this draft, and it's not as pressing of a need. I think there's some stuff they can do on the front end to be fine with the safety play that they've got on the back here. I think I'm going Beebe and then letting it roll.
Yeah, let it rock, man. I agree. That's a guy who potentially could be a starter. He could be this year's, even though around later, Osiris Torrance. He could be that type of.
I do love Zinter. Zinter's another guy I've been taking in round 4. He had that injury. I'm a Michigan guy, but that Michigan offensive line was fantastic. And I think his value got decreased by the injury and has pushed him down at least in the mock world. And it just seems like too good of a value to pass up. But BB's the other guy where even we had Joe Marino on for one of our mocks and he was just gushing over BB and I like him too. So.
This is the part of the PFF, to your point earlier that you made, where I completely agree. If they could just fix one damn thing, because it's easy to remember first and second round talents. Totally. But when you get to this point of the draft, you want to pause and you want to be like, whoa, I might be interested in moving up, 7 or 8 spots, but who's there? And at this point, it gets a little bit harder. All right, so the Bills run the clock. What?
I like Braylon Allen a lot to offset James Cook. Even as much as I like Ty Johnson, he was a priority to bring him back for me in free agency, but I do like Allen a lot.
Going him in safety could possibly be a good play. The Bills, by the way.
Bishop right there. I like that move for the Bills. I think he's a real nice fit, and I think Sean McDermott can mold him in. He's, again, talking about players with, I don't know where his floor is, but the ceiling seems really intriguing to me. Malik Mustafa is a guy that we've been targeting quite a bit.
We took him last week.
Also sitting right there, which again, at least the body and the frame, and you see the athleticism, there's a lot to work with there. Those right now seem to be the guys that I would be targeting here.
We're at pick 133 for people listening, and then our next pick's going to be at 144. Now, before we make a pick here, though, let's do this, Aaron. We're gonna make a pick. But just remember, like, these guys that you like a lot, because
Sure.
maybe we try to move up a couple spots from 144 as well, and we can start to work on giving up maybe 200 or something like that to maybe move up and
Totally.
try to
Yeah,
get two of
yeah,
you guys.
for sure.
Who's your pick here?
I think I'm gonna go with Cole Bishop
All right, so
here.
we're taking a safety, Cole Bishop. Let's keep our eye on Brandon Allen on the board for the next 3 or 4 picks here.
McCaffrey went ahead of him.
All right, so now I wasn't keep going to Washington. I swear to you, I didn't do that on purpose. I just hit stop after like 5 players. All right, so if you like Brandon Allen, he is on the board. It's pick 139. We got to pick 144 before we're scheduled again.
Sure.
Just again for shits and giggles, 144 and 200 is going to get you up 5 spots. If you like the running back and you want to go get him or someone else, this would be the spot to do it. Let's try like even 204. Says likely to be accepted as well. So
My only thing again is like these rooms, obviously we did it. We made some moves to go get wide receivers because that's such a pressing priority. Running back, you definitely need another body in this room. There's still some dudes available in free agency that I think if the draft settles and you don't get anyone, I think that you can get a cheap vet just to continue to fill that room out, which we've seen the Bills do throughout the years. James Cook is your number one, right? Like he's established that efficiency. The numbers that he put up last year were on par with some of the top running backs in the league. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not looking to take touches away from him. I do want to fill out that room a little bit, but running back continues to seem to be one of the worst investments that you can make in the NFL in terms of whether it's moving assets, taking it too early. And the Bills, years past, again, you've done a lot of mocks to me. There was years past where, yeah, I would have taken Breece Hall for a first round pick. There's definitely guys that I would have taken early. If they didn't have James Cook, I'd be all over Blake Corum in this draft early. But now the Bills are in a different spot where I think they can sit back and wait on that. There are some guys that I like late. So I don't think I would move assets, even though I don't think they want to leave with all these picks, and not all these picks can even make the Bills roster necessarily. I don't think I want to make the move for a running back here.
All right, let's just let it play out to pick 144. Then Brandon Allen went with the pick that we didn't make a trade for. So, all right, so he goes to Washington at 139. All right, so now you got the Bills on the clock. We're at 144. We'll pick again at 160. What are we thinking right now?
Man, there's a slight part of me that wants to take Mustafa here too, but we already gone safety, and they're too flush at safety in terms of numbers. They could still move on from a Damar Hamlin type guy and fill.
Do you have a thought on Cam Hart?
No, he's not necessarily the guy that I'm looking at. Zach Zinter's still there, which I actually wouldn't hate grabbing that and just saying, hey, heal up and we don't need you to be a participant here early in your career. One pick that real quick that I'm not going to do, especially since they got Trubisky and he's pretty much guaranteed to have a roster spot here in 2024. But Travis Jordan is so intriguing to me here late, because if it wasn't for him getting injured in a meaningless fourth quarter of a game, I think that was so stupid of Florida State to keep him in that game. It totally derailed their season and his draft value here. Because if he wasn't hurt, he'd be a much higher pick, I think. But the Bills would be that perfect situation where it's like, you can draft him and you don't need him this year. You could even, if he's still hurt and recovering, you could put him on injured reserve. And then he's just an asset chip of like, going forward, you don't need to pay backup QB, and you have a guy that has athleticism and has a bunch of traits. And God forbid something happens to Allen and he comes in and has some good play, you have a trade chip. Like anytime, all it takes is 1 or 2 good games from any backup quarterback to have a trade asset. So to me, it feels like a smart. Even Milton, guys like that would like, the Bills are in that perfect situation where we don't need you. There's zero pressure. Josh Allen's not going anywhere. He's our starter. You can just take your time, develop, and God forbid he gets hurt. If you have the opportunity to play well, now we have all the leverage here. So that's, we're not going to do it, but it's hard for me to not look at that. Can you just look at real quick corner? I didn't see a name go off the board that I absolutely love. I haven't seen it go off the board yet, but I might have missed it. I think I missed it. Scroll down a little bit. No, he's still there. Tom Hire. I'm higher on him than the PFF board is, but I absolutely love the fit of Dwight McGlothern for the Bills. But I think
Sure.
if maybe we can game the system a little bit and wait till 160 there for him. But I do love that. I think he's rated lowly by a bunch of dudes, but I think he fits the Bills perfectly. So let's go back to the main board again. Man, there's not a lot. I think you might be able to take Murphy with edge here and just,
Yeah.
he's not going to be a high upside guy, but maybe you can get him in and mold him into what you want. Scroll down a little bit more. Man, it's not lining up great, really. Honestly, people are probably going to hate it, but I think I take Zinter here too and just give him a year. And I think
Sure.
you can't have too many offensive linemen and go with that. I think I would go with that. If I could walk away with BB and Zinter, I think Zinter can also play center going
Mhm.
forward a little bit
Let's
for
do
you.
it.
And so it
I
gives
like
you some
that pick.
opportunity to be flush at interior. And we know that, or I think that Brandon Beane up until last year didn't do a good enough job in that interior offensive line and took a lot of shortcuts. So if you can fix it going forward, I'd feel good about that still.
All right, so the Bills are coming up on the clock at 160 to
Yeah,
review what we talked about since taking Zinter. Gabriel Murphy went a couple picks later to Denver. Let's see what else we have here. Jordan Travis, you just talked about him, the quarterback. He goes to the Rams at 154. Malik Mustafa, 153 to the Jaguars. All right, so the Bills are on the clock. I was going to try to talk you into at 160 going taking the quarterback at that point. I think that would have
sure.
been a great spot, but he is gone. He's not a choice. So we're at pick 160. I feel like if you like Dwight McGovern, and I've heard pretty good things about him, I feel like this could be a good spot for him.
Yep. I know Eric likes Pritchard a lot as well.
Mm.
But for me, one thing that stands out about McGovern, I know Bruce Nolan really likes him a lot too. Um, Trey White talked about it when he came into the Bills. The way the Bills play coverages, and I know there's been a lot of talk about, are they going to change, be more man? I don't see it. I think Sean McDermott's defense is going to be Sean McDermott. They'll add some wrinkles, they'll add some new stuff, but he wants guys that know how to play soft zone coverage. And when I watch Dwight McGlothern, I see a guy that knows how to attack the ball off soft zone coverage. And I think that's a hard transition for a lot of these college guys. I think a lot of them are good at playing man. Like I said, their 7-on-7 influx at the youth level has made a lot more, hey, I can keep up with you in man. But
Mhm.
the NFL is very much turning into a zone defense league. And I think that he fits what the Bills do a lot. And he's got the size, and I think he can come up and tackle and do some things. So I would actually be running up at 160, even though he's ranked in 200, and you could probably, again, game the system and wait a little bit and trade back up. I'm running up and just taking the guy that I like.
Yeah, we did that. All right. So now the next pick is going to be 200. We got three left: 200, 204, 248. So we've taken
Yeah.
two receivers, we've taken two interior offensive linemen, we got ourselves a safety, and we just took a corner.
Yeah. We missed on
About
interior
200
defensive
yards.
line a little bit, which is a
Yeah,
bummer.
but I think they're okay for this year, though. You can
Sure.
make that a priority next year. They're
Sure.
four deep now at interior defensive line. Ditto for edge. I would personally, between me of the two, I would take an edge if I can get one earlier before.
There was an edge I do like that just went off the board, which maybe we should have been looking for and paying attention to trade up. And the running back that I like, that I was kind of waiting on. Both of those guys went off the board. So that might have been an opportunity to make a jump. So if you scroll up, Kamani Vidal is a guy that I'm absolutely in love with. Actually, people won't like hearing this. Bills fans won't love hearing this. Got some Devin Singletary vibes, just in terms of, I think he's
Sure.
more athletic than he looks on tape, and he can make people miss, and he's got great contact balance. I think he would be a perfect running back 2-3 for the Bills. Great in pass protection as well. All those traits
Yeah.
that you can't necessarily teach. And if you're going to be a young late round pick and come in and play in the NFL, you need to know how to pass protect. You need to have good contact balance. You need to always be pushing forward. So he's a guy that stands out to me. And then scroll up again is Jalen Harrell there from Michigan would be an
Yeah.
edge that I don't think his college career he was able to necessarily fully blossom as an edge that would be a higher ranked guy in a draft. But I think you get your hands on him and you get him in the right room, that he's got some of the tools that you would need. And so he's a guy that I've also been targeting. But right here, let's look at what is available. I do like McKinley Jackson. I think he's a little bit lower ranked in some of these boards than I think he is. I think he's a little bit higher up. And James Williams is interesting. He's not a safety. I think he's a linebacker, but I think Bills have enough going on at linebacker right now where you don't
You
need to
talked
do
about
that.
Milton. You talked about Joe Milton. He's still there.
He's still there. Christian Boyd, I don't hate either. So I think maybe we could address at least getting a body in here on the interior defensive line. I think I'd go McKinley Jackson here just to get a body in and see how it works out. And you're taking them so late here that doesn't matter if it works out or not, and you can move on forward. But you're always going to need bodies. You're going to need to be flush.
And we're right back on the clock too.
And so we're right back on the clock here. Let's scroll through. Not a lot left. Let's see. I don't think they can use a draft capital on a quarterback just because, again, you've got you're going to have to hope he stays in on the practice squad. Maybe take a waiver here on Frank Gore Jr. As that practice squad running back, third running back in. We know they love Frank Gore, and there's a connection there. Trying to see what else. Yeah, it hurts that Vidal went off the board because that would have been my pick here in one of these two.
Sure. In hindsight, it should have been looking to trade up there.
That's all right. Let's take Gore here. Again, some of this doesn't matter. I don't know that picks 204 and 248 are gonna hang out on the Bills roster all that much.
No, we're not doing that. All right. So we're gonna take Gore. Where the hell is he? There he is. By the way, shout out. I did this once on the podcast already. He's 259 on there. Shout out to Sean Fenwick. Not going to get drafted probably, but my kid played with him at Braid River High School.
Nice.
In Florida. Really good player, man. Good kid. Too.
Gore's probably also not going to get drafted, but I'm going to take him here and everybody can shut up.
Yeah.
The last pick, I already know where I'm going. And again, this is maybe playing the board a little bit, although Dan Bolger also had him as an undrafted guy. A lot of the boards have him as an undrafted guy. I think he'll make it here.
Wasn't he just a guess? Wasn't he just a guess on a Cover One show? Like
he was
a day or two ago. I believe.
Well, he was on with Anthony.
Yeah, God, that's a good get, man.
He's great. And actually, anyone listening, I think should go check out the Air Raid Hour. Did a really interesting, a lot is made out of everybody's doing mocks. You're doing mocks. We're going to do a mock this week. It's easy content to do, but I do think it is a good exercise to familiarize everybody with prospects and talk this stuff out.
100%.
Devonshire would be another guy I'd be targeting here. I actually don't think he's going to be available in the 7th. I think he's more of a 6th or higher guy, but anytime there's a pit corner, Bills are going to be in play for that. And he's actually different than some of the other pit players that they've gone after in terms of he's got athleticism that some of the other guys don't have. AJ Woods would be in play here, but you already went corner. Go over to safety for me real quick. And a guy that I'm absolutely in love with, and he is not on a lot of boards. He's showing up as an undrafted free agent in a lot of places. Kenny Logan Jr. I love this dude. I encourage anyone. There's not a lot of tape on him, and I hate to just watch guys' highlights. But if you go watch him, go on YouTube, take a look at him. The dude, he really reminds me of Taron Johnson. He plays safety. He's undersized, so that's hurting him a little bit. But he's the leading tackler in Kansas history. He's a tackling machine. He's always around the ball. He's a special teams player. He did some return stuff at Kansas, so he can return. He could play special teams. I think he could be Cam Lewis, but better. I think he could play some slot. Wow. He could be your backup slot. I think that he can play some safety. I think he could be one of those kind of hybrid floating players, but also contribute really well on special teams. And I absolutely love him. He might be undrafted. He might not even make it in the league, but he's a guy that I love DBs, especially undersized ones that come up and tackle, and he checks all those boxes for me. So
let me run through this draft now again for on the video side. Obviously, you can see it visually. On the audio side, I'll run it through. All right, so we traded back with our first round pick. We moved back 2 spots with Baltimore. We got 30 and 93 for 28 and 128. 30th pick, first round, we took Lab McConkey.
Love it.
And then we traded up in the second round with the Raiders, went up from 60 to 44. We gave up 60, 163 in a third next year, and we double dipped. We got Xavier Legette. Round 3. Something about this pick I really like a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if I got a C+ on a third round pick for a guy that probably start. Yeah,
Cooper Beebe, a guard from Kansas State. I feel like he could be a guy who could come in and be a starter right away. Yeah. Anyway, Third round pick, Cooper Beebe. Fourth round, we got a safety, Cole Bishop from Utah. PFF
Also,
says
might be able to push for starter right away.
Sure, absolutely. Fifth round pick 144, Zach Zinter. So we double dipped again, interior offensive line.
Yeah.
D plus. PFF don't like that shit, man.
Dude, here's my thing real quick. Like,
Mhm.
PFF needs to stop doing this with fifth round picks, dude.
Yeah,
how are you going to give me a D plus on a fifth round guy? Like,
well,
or
how
D
about
minus?
a D minus for Dwight McGlothern, our other fifth round pick? Man,
Stupid.
PFF did not like our fifth round. Corner from Arkansas. McKinney Jackson, an interior defensive lineman, is our sixth round pick at 200. Frank Gore Jr., who that's on me, man. If we're an organization, you're yelling at me for falling asleep at the wheel in the war room because we could have got the running back that we wanted. We slept on it, and we end up with Frank Gore Jr. From Southern Miss. And then in the last pick, round 7, 248, Kenny Logan Jr., Kansas. You just heard Aaron talking about a guy that he likes a lot. Overall, PFF, which means 0, but overall, PFF gives us a B minus for this
I'll
draft.
take it.
All right, so we'll put a wrap on this. I mean, you look now, you do this in real time. I feel like I kind of threw you for a little bit of a loop by making a couple trades early on, kind of get you out of the,
I like these.
norm. Yeah, you when you walk away from this draft, what are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, I think one, you've addressed what everyone perceives to be the biggest need with a double dip. And I think that gives you a little bit of leeway. I think both these guys are going to be hits for you, but even if one doesn't, you've given yourself 2 chances to get a hit here. And Leggett, while I think he has a high ceiling, I think he is going to take a little bit of time to adjust to the NFL level. And so you've got a guy, McConkey, I think is going to come in right away and be productive NFL wide receiver. He gets open. And that's all that I care about is find a guy that can separate, get open, get soft in zone coverage, be a good target for Josh Allen. He checks all those boxes. It's almost like you're getting yourself 2 Khalil Shakirs, which is great. I think these guys are going to be productive wide receivers. You can pair them together. I love my mind is racing of the stuff you can do with Dalton Kincaid and Lad McConkey and Khalil Shakir all together. And then you give Leggett the ability to come in and be a guy that you don't have to necessarily rely on, but is going to give you bonus extra production. And I think that he's going to be able to do that in the NFL even right away. And potentially, I don't know where that ceiling could get to. I think that he could be a AJ Brown type guy, maybe potentially eventually. So that's a great value there. To your point, you get a guy that could probably start on your interior line, a very rangy guy in Cole Bishop, where again, no position has had greater impact by coaching than defensive back. So if I think you get a guy late here, I think that you can mold him into the type of guy you want. You've had a huge void at the safety position. It gives you another opportunity to fill that void. Zinter, I don't agree with their grade on him here. I think he's a good interior guy who can eventually be a starter. I think he's got to take some time to recover from that injury, but I love this in round 5, and you've already got BB necessarily to fill that void, and it just gives you some insurance. Again, I love McGovern. He's one of my guys. So I don't agree with the D minus here. I think he fits the bills. And again, there's no rush to get him in. He doesn't have to be a productive member of your team right now. But you always need more corners. You need more receivers and corners every single year in the NFL. How many years have we seen the Bills pulling guys off the street to play cornerback because they're down 2-3 guys in week 8, 9, 10? So you get that. Frank Gore is probably the only pick that I don't love in this, Frank Gore Jr., but whatever. It's a nod to his dad, get him in the building. Maybe he could be a practice squad guy, but everything else here, I like these guys, and I think they're all Bills fits, which matters more to me than PFF boards or anybody's board or where people has them is, do they fit with the Bills and the Bills needs? And I think we hit that pretty across the board.
I got to be completely honest with you. This might be, I've done 4 now. This is probably my favorite haul that I've had in any of these 4. And I also know you well enough to know that we're making these picks with how you think and not necessarily how the fans are going to react. Because I'm going to be honest with you. You come away with McConkey and Leggett, I think our next 5 picks could have been me, you, Greg, Anthony, Bruce Nolan, and whoever else. And I still think there would have been a portion of Bills fans that would have said, that's a wrap. I love the draft.
Sure.
Because you double dip that wide receiver. The only, again, downside is you're probably saying next year is going to be all in on, the trenches, defensive line. But I think you got enough for this year that you could do that. Von Miller being a key. If you think Von Miller is going to be not even Von Miller Vol, but if he's going to be Leonard Floyd this year, what Leonard Floyd was last year, you take that and you're good with that. Anyway, all right, man, this was fun. Thank you. It's good.
Yeah.
Good having you back, man. Good having a nice little chat with you. Make sure you follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. By the way, don't look at your Twitter. I just memorized that up the top of my head, man.
Hey, thanks.
Seeing that,
this has got to be one of the easier ones to remember, right?
I'll be back tomorrow with like I said, a pretty much, I'm sure now, a very Sabres heavy show. Don Granado gets fired as big news. Plenty of thoughts on that. Thanks, brother. Good having you on, man.
Appreciate you, man.
I'll be back. Brand new show tomorrow.